Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to just say we had a bad Sunday, but I've watched Dallas now twice fall behind. And the teams that can fall behind and win have firepower, playmakers, right? That's why New England gets behind, it's over. Miami gets behind, they can come back. I look at Dallas now, I don't think they'll have these conversations, but I just don't think, Albert, it was a bad game. They can't play from behind. It's CeeDee Lamb and guys. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
What say you?
I mean, Ferguson, Schoonmaker, I mean, you go down the list, Gallup, like the guys that they have. Yeah. I mean, this isn't the Dolphins. And there's a lot on the line for a lot of people in that building this year. I think if you want to look at the coaching staff changes, letting Kellen Moore go to Los Angeles, promoting Brian Schottenheimer, that was taken as Mike McCarthy's way of doubling down on his own system and saying, I did it right a lot of years in Green Bay, and if I'm going to go down, we're going to go down doing it my way. He's also got on his staff Dan Quinn, who Stephen Jones is very fond of and could be a ready-made replacement. So to say that this is a critical stretch, especially these next three games where they play, the Chargers, the Rams, and the Eagles, they have their bye week in the middle there.
Well-coached teams.
Would not be an understatement.
Yeah.
There's a ton on the line. And for Dak, too, Dak's going into a contract year, and look, like when the Cowboys internally look back at Dak's career now, they look back and they see when Zeke Elliott was really rolling, he was a very good player. And they didn't have to ask the world of him. And he was able to play within the lines, within the context of that offense, when they had a great offensive line in front of him. Zach Martin in his prime, Tyron Smith in his prime, Travis Frederick early in his career. And the context has changed because of the contract. And because of the contract, now they can't put quite as much around him. And then, I look at the San Francisco game, that's the juxtaposition of it, because they've got a cheap quarterback, and look at the team they're able to put together. So there are definitely a lot of big picture questions to be asked in Dallas. I think it's going to be asked on the coaching staff. I also think it's going to be asked on the quarterback, especially with, again, him going into a contract year, and they're going to have to address that after the season.
Listen, I said, because he sat for 3 years in the building, I said, give me until Thanksgiving. Generally, my takeaway on all these young quarterbacks, Thanksgiving, second year, I'll make a call. For Jordan Love, it's Thanksgiving first year because you've been there for 3 years. It's a stable organization. When I watch Anthony Richardson move the ball, C.J. Stroud be composed, I'm sorry, Albert, I watch Jordan Love. He cannot throw the ball down the field accurately. I would be worried. Would you not?
I'm not there yet. I mean, I think, what you have to remember is Rodgers was, I believe this is right, 10-14 over his first 24 starts in Green Bay. So it was a year and a half before they really took off with Aaron Rodgers. I also think you have to look at what's happened from an injury standpoint there. And I'm not making excuses for him, but David Bakhtiari being out is a huge, huge deal. Elton Jenkins has missed time. Christian Watson has missed time. Aaron Jones has missed time. Really looking at it over the first 5 games of the season, they haven't had the full team around him. And he's been okay when they've had most of those guys. And so I would have a level of concern, Colin. And I think that, certainly you look at this and this is going to be, important how he plays the rest of the year, but they have him signed and guaranteed through next year. So they've given themselves 2 years to figure this out. And I think ultimately they will give themselves the full 2 years to figure out whether or not Jordan Love's the quarterback of the future. And I think it's very easy, again, to look at the first 5 weeks of the season and say, okay, it's been pretty up and down, but it's also been very inconsistent in we've also been very inconsistent in what we've been putting around him.
So Sean Payton said, we're not getting on the phone and calling teams, but we'll pick the phone up. I think they've got one player, Patrick Surtain, on the market you get a lot for. And then they got a left tackle. Then they've got, a running back, a safety, a tight end who's hurt, banged up, but good. They've got some good players, but most everybody's movable. I threw this theory out 10 minutes ago, that San Francisco has literally demolished 2 excellent, good rosters. Dallas, Pittsburgh, not even competitive. First half, game over. That San Francisco now has got 9 potential Hall of Fame level players on it. Everybody's watching them dismantle people. And the good teams in this league, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo, Baltimore, I think in this trade deadline may be like, you know what, we don't need a quarterback. A lot of these bad teams do. They got good players. I think it could be an active trade deadline. Throw Denver out there. Listen, Payton needs draft capital. Could you see them just at the trade deadline moving off even their great corner?
Denver needs picks. I mean, there's no question about that. And I think they're going to listen on everybody, especially if things keep going the next couple of weeks the way that they've already gone. And they do have some valuable pieces on their roster. And I wouldn't stop at the guys that you mentioned. The two receivers, I think if you want to go back to April, the price for Judy was a 1. The price for Cortland Sutton was a 2. That was to start the conversation. They didn't get there. If someone offers a 1 or a 2 for Judy or Sutton, I could see that happening. Josie Jewell is an off-ball linebacker there, a really good, smart, instinctive player. He's somebody who, like, would a Buffalo be interested in him?
Yeah.
Justin Simmons at safety,
yes.
right? Like one of the best safeties in the league over the last 5 years. Would Philadelphia be interested in him?
Yep.
And then that brings you to Patrick Surtain, who is not only the best player on that roster, but maybe one of the best players in the league, maybe the best corner in the league. A great guy, clean. And he's got, I think, 2.5 years of cheap labor ahead of him, where his rookie contract still got term on it. I can't imagine what he'd be worth, because you think about the Jalen Ramsey context, right? The Jaguars got 2 first-round picks for Jalen Ramsey, and that was with Jalen Ramsey at the end of his contract, and he was hurt and he was disgruntled.
Yes.
That's not the case here. So I don't even know what you would offer for someone like Surtain, but the Broncos need picks, so they're going to listen on everybody. I don't think they move Surtain. I think Surtain's a building block for them going forward. I certainly think that guys like, Judy and Sutton and Garrett Bowles and Justin Simmons and Josie Jewell would be in play. You'd have to give them a lot to get Surtain. But again, like you said, they need picks.
So Justin Fields, they got a little extra time, off a win. Vikings don't have Justin Jefferson. Very, very winnable game. Do you think the way he played in the win, did Justin, because I've said before, Justin's about the only thing in Chicago I look at and go, I'll give him some more time because I see talent. Yep. I don't know about the staff, the front office. The kid's got talent. Yeah. That's not arguable. Where are we at with Justin Fields? I think they're going to beat Minnesota. And I think the Justin Jefferson thing's a sign that Minnesota at the trade deadline may move some stuff. Where are you with Justin Fields now?
Yeah, well, a couple things that I think, you want to look at with what the staff has done in Chicago. And Luke Getsy, their offensive coordinator, I think has sort of found a way to strike that balance the last 2 games between using Justin Fields as a runner and threatening the defense with him as a runner, but not overdoing it. And then figuring out how to use DJ Moore. And if you look at Justin Fields' history, this goes back to Ohio State, Colin. He's been really good when the team he's on has been able to run the ball. Even at Ohio State, when the team he's on hasn't been able to run the ball, he's had problems. They've run the ball really well against Denver. They ran the ball really well against Washington. And now Khalil Herbert, who had been the lead back against Washington there, had a huge game. Now he's hurt. So this is going to become an interesting test for them going forward. First, of course, on Sunday against Minnesota is what does Justin Fields look like if the running game's got a little bit less? But certainly they've figured out a way to use him. They've convinced him, take the layups, get the ball out of your hands quicker. It feels like, he has really turned a corner. And again, without Herbert in there, it's going to be an interesting test for him. And I'd agree too that I think the Vikings could wind up being a seller at the deadline. I think the Caleb Williams thing here, I mean, to me, I think there's just some really interesting stuff. I think I've mentioned this to you before that's going to transpire over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
What do you mean it's going to what does that mean? That was you kind of threw that thing out there.
I'll put it this way. Like back in April and May, I had some really smart NFL people tell me they thought this might be the most active trade deadline in a long time. And the reason why was because of the quarterback group coming out. Obviously, Caleb Williams is seen as a generational guy, but beyond just that, you've got some other good players, Drake May primary among them. And it was raised to me could owners get involved? Owners listen to their analytics people. Analytics people are able to put a real value on what a franchise quarterback could mean for a team. So if an owner's listening to his analytics people and his analytics people are telling him, hey, the best thing for you to do right now is to lose and to get in a position to get one of those 2 quarterbacks if you're convinced those are franchise guys. What's the owner telling his general manager? What's the owner telling his coach? If he's 1-5, if he's 0-6, if he's 1-6 going into that Halloween week. I just think there are going to be some interesting conversations in some of these buildings where an owner could get starry-eyed over the idea of getting a Caleb Williams or a Drake May.
Yeah.
And so I think that could lead to some pretty interesting dynamics over the next couple of weeks.
And this goes back to my San Francisco theory, is that they look so good that you mentioned Buffalo, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, Kansas City, good teams are like, listen, we don't need a quarterback. These other teams do. Denver does. I can see somebody giving a really good draft pick for Cortland Sutton. I really can. I mean, if you're Kansas City right now, your receiving core is not good enough.
Well, how about Minnesota? Like, right? Like, what would you get for Danielle Hunter? Like a top-end pass rusher. Forget Kirk Cousins. What could you get for Danielle Hunter? What could you get for Harrison Smith? What could you get potentially for KJ Osborne, who's a really good slot receiver in a contract year, who you might not be willing to pay because you've got Justin Jefferson to pay and you got Jordan Addison on the other side of him. You know, so like there are teams that are in this position that have good players where you look at it and, I mean, if you're the Vikings and you're looking at this and you're saying to yourself, all right, like this isn't the year for us. And if somebody wants Danielle Hunter, as good as he is, like he's in a contract year, he might not be here next year. Same thing with KJ Osborne, you know? So I think teams like Minnesota and Denver, which like aren't objectively bad rosters, have like pieces to sell, could wind up being real players at the trade deadline and in a different way than they have been in the past as sellers, not buyers.
That receiver, you made a very good point. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison of the future. That's a variant. The Osborne kid, the young kid you mentioned.
He can really play, too.
Absolutely play, and you can't pay him. I mean, I guess you could if you got off Kirk Cousins' contract. Boy, there's some. But you
think about it, you've already paid Hawkinson, too. So, like, the money you're allotting to your skill positions there, right? Like, Jefferson, Hawkinson, like, paying another receiver would be a luxury in that case, especially when you've got a first-round pick sunk in Jordan Addison. So it's an interesting idea, at least. And I think it's one that teams would make phone calls on.
Boy, that is interesting. But for the record, that they let Dalvin Cook go for this reason. They knew going forward, we can't pay everybody. They have an extra really talented receiver. Man, Breer, that's why we bring you on, for all your jarring all this stuff. Very quality work here. Monday morning quarterback Albert Breer. Good stuff, bud.
All right, thanks, Colin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.